If you are 16 or 17, you can register to vote right now. Scan the QR code on the posters outside the library to get registered. You can win a prize just for registering. Now here's Greg Smith, our moderator for this debate.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. From the Anishinaabe to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, these treaty lands are steeped in rich Indigenous history and modern traditions. As a community, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, of the Anishinaabe peoples on whose ancestral and treaty lands we teach, learn, and live. More important than land acknowledgements, though, are the actions that our community takes to repair past harms and care for the land we are on. What better time than an election to think about the actions that we can take to right these wrongs? I would like to go over the format for the debate. Each of the candidates will have a 1-minute opening, starting here and going to the end. Then they will also have a 1-minute closing, where we'll start from the opposite end and come back this way. There will be questions from the floor. Some have been prepared by our civics classes. When it's time for questions, students can come around here and touch base with Mr. Scott if you would like to ask a question. For the questions, each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. We'll kind of rotate through who starts. So the first question will go to Mr. Parr, and then we'll kind of rotate through. Each candidate also has one 1-minute rebuttal. So at some point, if a candidate wants to add in an extra minute, they can hold this card up and make sure to get my attention. And then once everyone else has answered the questions, you'll have a minute to add something in. So that's once during the question period. You can use that if you would like. So that is all I've got to say. So we can get started here with, you can just introduce yourselves. Oh, and one more thing, sorry. Ms. Parks here is going to be our timer. So when you have 15 seconds remaining, she'll hold up the yellow card. And when your minute is up, she'll hold up the red card. And then at that point, I will interrupt you and invite you on to the next candidate. Okay, so go ahead.
Hi, thank you for having me here today to talk to you. It's one of the few debates I've been invited to, which is unfortunate when we're running in a democracy here and want to give you guys the opportunity to view different viewpoints and political ideologies. I'm Will Lonker. I'm running with the New Blue Party. I'm a small business family from a family business. I was first born in Canada in my family. Being a politician is not my lifelong dream. It's a matter of principle for me. We've seen that the government has been acting very similarly across the other parties in terms of how they want to control our lives. I'm not a raging freedom person, but we have to realize that there is a level of control that we are giving up, and we have to decide where that tension should fall. And so I'm here to represent the other side of that and conservative values in general.
All right, thank you. Mr. Parr, go ahead.
Hi, my name is James Parr. I'm here representing the NDP. For those who don't know me, I'm a lifelong Guelphite and I actually love this city. I was born at Guelph General, went to high school at John F. Ross, and completed my undergrad at the University of Guelph. I'm a renter, I'm an employee, and I still have a mountain of OSAP debt from my 2 degrees. Life is getting more and more unaffordable by the day. That's why the NDP wants to implement a $20 minimum wage. We want to turn your OSAP loans into grants. When you graduate, you're not burdened with outstanding a lot of debt. We want pharmacare, dental care, and mental health care. So no matter what job you choose, you can get the benefits that you need to survive. We have a plan to fix our healthcare system and our education system. We also understand that right now we are facing a mountain of climate change crisis, and we want to make sure we fully address it by having a zero emission strategy, by having a zero vehicle. Sorry, I'm really nervous today. So anyways, thank you so much for me being here, and I look forward to your questions.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. My name is Rochelle Devereaux, and I am Guelph's provincial Liberal candidate for the upcoming election. I first fell in love with this community when I came here to Guelph in 1996 to study at the University of Guelph. Since that time, I have had 3 kids in this great city, Charles, Matthew, and Amelia, one of whom I just dropped off at a soccer tournament in the north end of the city. I also grew my leadership capabilities here as well. When I was your age, sitting where you are, I faced many of the same challenges that you might be facing. I didn't have enough money to go to post-secondary school, and even if I did, I wasn't sure what that might look like. It was through the help of guidance counselors and school staff who helped to point me towards economic prosperity, decisions that would help me go on to actually see a future where I could actually make income that would support the life I wanted to live. And so I'm really proud to stand for the Liberal government who stands for economic prosperity and inclusion.
Morning, everyone. I'm Mike Schreiner. It's been an honor to be your MPP over the last 4 years. Many of you may have heard I contracted COVID last week, and though I've had 5 negative tests in a row now, I decided I'm going to wear a mask out of respect for everyone and all of you today. It's been an honor to work for this community and be your voice at Queen's Park. And I know there is so much more work we have to do. The Ontario Greens are committed to building a caring, connected, climate-ready Ontario, making the investments in our public health care and public education, ensuring that students have access to affordable, high-quality post-secondary education, and that we make the investments we need to make to address the climate crisis in a way that ensures you have access to good green jobs. That's where the job growth is happening, and I believe Guelph can continue being a leader in building the future you want.
Hi everyone, I'm Anita Burnett. My pronouns are she and her, and I've lived in Guelph since 1994 when I moved here with my 3-year-old. As a parent, a student, a worker, and an activist involved with anti-poverty, pro-labor, and human rights issues, a political person generally, I am a part of many connected communities. To me, the Communist Party is about building strong communities, giving everyone what they need, full, free, universal services, and the time, money, and energy required for a healthy work-life balance. It would be paid for by a shift in priorities, along with tax reforms based on the ability to pay. Our program is available at communistpartyontario.ca, and I hope you'll check it out. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So this is going to be the question and answer portion of our debate. So a reminder to any students, if you would like to ask a question, come on over here to this side and you can line up or come and talk to Mr. Scott if you would like to ask a question. And then the candidates will again have 1 minute each to respond to each question. And the NDP will answer the first one first, and then we'll go through and rotate that way. Okay.
the current cost of living in Guelph is $18.10. So just to be able to find a place to rent, with the average price of Guelph for one bedroom is $1,800, to finally get your grocery bill, and to save for retirement, $20 minimum wage allows everyone to fully get the bare necessities to live. Because a minimum wage in itself isn't just meant that you're like barely getting by in starvation. It's meant so you can thrive in your community. And in the context of whether a degree is worth it or not, the main issue is if you're working a 40 hours a week, you should be able to fully feed your family and thrive regardless of whatever your position is. And then if you do determine to get an education, which I do, I hope everyone does, either in the trades or at university, there's plenty of other jobs up there with many different pay brackets, so it will benefit everyone.
Great question, and very much like James said, the cost of living for regional living wage, which the Ontario Liberal Party is supporting, is $18.10. And that ultimately means that when you are working full-time, you have enough resources to survive. In addition to that, the Ontario Liberal Party is also going to implement what are called portable health and dental benefits. At the Guelph Community Health Centre, we serve many people who have complex health issues, and when they're experiencing, for example, pain, our physicians and nurse practitioners can't refer them to massage therapy or physiotherapy or chiropractor because so many working poor Ontarians don't have access to the health and dental benefits that we know are needed to thrive. And so just living wages and basic incomes, which the Ontario Liberals also support, will not dilute the importance of focusing your career where you are passionate and putting education behind that passion.
Yeah, thank you for an excellent question. We all benefit and we all thrive when everybody in our community can afford to pay the bills. That's why the Ontario Greens support increasing the minimum wage, bringing in a living wage so you can afford to live in the community you love and work in, and a basic income. And I can tell you as a longtime small business owner that small businesses thrive when lower income workers have the money they need to be able to shop locally, support local businesses, and lead a dignified life. Our healthcare system thrives because we know that people experiencing poverty put more pressure on our healthcare system. And so we're all going to benefit if we all have a living wage, can afford housing, and can afford to pay the bills and put food on the table and support ourselves and our families.
The Communist Party of Canada, Ontario, is actually fighting for a $23 an hour minimum wage, and that is the minimum wage. One of the effects that raising the minimum wage has is it raises all incomes. People have a lot more power when you raise the bottom, it lifts everyone. One of the reasons Bill 124 has to go is that it's been limiting income raises for public servants to 1% per year. That when inflation is at like 5, 6, 7% right now. So public service workers are losing money, and we need to lift that up. A guaranteed annual livable income would also raise social assistance rates and disability rates. Thanks.
Well, no surprise that I have a different policy position on this matter. As a small business owner currently, and as someone who's talked to hundreds of businesses around Guelph, some of these policies around raising minimum wage are irresponsible. They're going to crush them. They're on the edge. They've been shut down. They haven't been able to operate their business. Their revenues coming in are down. Their costs of items are high, like they are for everyone else. And what happens when costs go up for businesses? They pass them on to the consumer. When you rise the price of labor and you rise the price of goods for the transitional, say, food in the restaurant industry, they pass that on, which is inflation. It helps. It doesn't make anything better for it. It's regressive. It ends up hurting the low-income workers more. You want a more competitive dynamic. I know people might not agree with that, but we can talk about it more if you want, and you can reach out to me if you want to discuss it further.
Okay, next question.
How will you make healthy local food easier to access and more affordable for everyone, and in particular for people that are low earners?
Okay, Liberals, go ahead first, please.
Thank you so much for the question. Food security is a core social determinant of health. At the Guelph Community Health Center, I was one of the founding partners of the Seed Community Food Project, which strives to bring fresh, local, accessible, good food to the doorsteps of all Guelph residents, including those who are facing food insecurity. When we talk about access to good food, we're also often talking about how much money you have in your pocket to access that good food. And so in order to address that cost of living or affordability, the Ontario Liberals are eliminating the HST portion on prepared foods under $20, which means that we will be saving funds when we go to restaurants or to hot counters. But in addition to that, really growing our agricultural systems and focusing on our circular food economy, which means less waste and greater accessibility to get good, healthy food to all of our doors, not just to those who can afford it.
Yeah, this is a question that's near and dear to my heart as somebody who started a couple of local food businesses and been a part of starting up nonprofits to make healthy local food more available to people. One of the best ways we can do that is to address poverty. Poverty is the biggest barrier to accessing healthy food. And that's why the Ontario Greens are the only party calling for an immediate doubling of social assistance rates so that we end legislative poverty in this province. We also know that we have to protect the farmland that farmers grow that food on, which is why we're opposed to Highway 413 and the Bradford bypass and the current government's pro-sprawl agenda. We would also look at best practices around the world and bring in a grocery code of conduct to help protect local farmers and consumers from rising prices in our concentrated retail markets. And finally, we believe everyone in school should have access to healthy local food, which is why we would bring in a healthy local lunch program for our schools.
Thank you. Part of the Communist Party's program is not just increasing wages, but reducing living costs. So for housing, we want rent controls, but also rent rollbacks, because if we just stop at our housing prices right now, for rentals especially, and housing, it's not going to get us anywhere. Part of our program, we would enact price controls on food, fuel, and housing, prosecute price fixing and price gouging. I think with the 32-hour work week with no loss in pay, it also gives people time and energy to do some of the work that is unpaid, like gardening. And I'm excited for the growing season. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that largely we can agree on some of the issues in terms of like wanting to make sure people can get food and access to food. Our focus for this campaign in Renew Blue is going to be just general affordability and making sure that people can use their dollar for more. And we do that through tax relief programs, things like cutting HST and reducing our electricity rates, things that impact everybody. And that gives them a little bit more money to handle dealing with some of the rising costs of goods. I do recognize that some food items are not taxed with HST, and that's not a universal truth. But it is something that's important. I'd love to work with people on finding good solutions to doing that in a way that isn't top down.
Great question. I was out till 10 o'clock last night planting my tomato plants because there is a real importance of getting the nutrition you need. I really want to credit Rochelle from Starting Seed, an organization I currently use, and we need more cooperative and non-profit food delivery systems. We also, through the NDP, want to work with farmers to strengthen our supply chain. A lot of you probably noticed your produce getting moldy a couple days sooner. So working to really strengthen our supply chain, bring down the cost of just delivering goods, and then also through the increase to our minimum wage. Because if workers have more money, and if the top isn't taking it from them, then they're able to spend it on what they need. So we really want to work with the farmers and communities to make sure they have locally accessible, fresh produce so they can get the nutrition they need. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next question, please.
Hello, my name is Bella Boyd and I'm grade 9 here at College Heights. And as someone who has dealt with this as a family problem for most of my life, what will you be doing about the rising housing prices to make them more affordable? In particular, what will you be doing to help those who are having difficulties paying rent, utilities, and mortgages with the rising housing market and little to no wage increases?
All right, we're going to start with the Green Party.
Yeah, I would say when I knock on doors in Guelph, this is by far the #1 issue people are concerned about is housing affordability. The Ontario Greens put out a plan last year that Canada's largest newspaper says a masterclass plan in delivering the solutions we need. It's about getting speculation out of the housing market because homes should be for people, not speculators. It's about building more supply that's affordable for people by getting rid of the zoning rules that prevent people from building duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes, that prevent and make it difficult for building missing middle housing. And finally, the government needs to get back into housing. In the mid-1990s, the provincial and federal government stopped supporting co-op and nonprofit housing. The Ontario Greens have made a commitment to building 182,000 of deeply affordable housing spaces across this province, including permanent supportive housing right here in Guelph with wraparound mental health, addictions, and other supports. And when people are in those housings, we need to make sure they're energy efficient so we can keep their utility bills down and reduce climate pollution.
Thanks. As I mentioned before, our housing program includes rent control to cover all rental units, and we would enact rent rollbacks to ensure no one has to pay more than 20% of their income on housing. We're looking at a provincial social housing program that treats housing as a public utility and delivers it according to need. We would build 200,000 units and upgrade existing ones, provide regular inspections for all rental housing, and enforce stiff penalties, including expropriation for landlords that do not meet standards. There are more details at our housing campaign at housingforpeople.ca.
Housing is a complex issue and involves multiple layers of government. The municipality has a role to play in it, and zoning, province certainly has their roles in regulations, and we can understand the federal government can choose to fund and not fund certain programs. There is a need for more houses, but we're in the midst of a transition here, and we have to recognize that if you read the papers or you follow major banks, there's going to be a correction. So we're going to see prices drop now as the interest rates go up. So that's a reality we also have to recognize as we go forward here. Reducing regulation on the building and the delays from meeting zoning applications. I'd say I agree with Mike on that one. We need to get rid of some of those zoning barriers. These are things that will speed up the ability to build these properties, and it also gives the return on investment for the developers. It improves it. So if they make more houses, have more supply, if there's more supply, that reduces the cost of houses in the marketplace.
Housing is a very complicated issue. Building more supply will definitely help, but it doesn't stop the price gouging from developers and from landlords. The NDP wants to bring comprehensive rent controls and rent subsidies to make sure that you pay exactly what your last tenant paid, so your landlord isn't incentivized to evict you. We also want to get rid of exclusionary zoning. So when we build new subdivisions, they can have apartment buildings next to single-family homes, and we can actually start building communities, walkable communities that we want with work, live, and play in. Housing is a basic human right, and we have to start seeing it as that. It's not an investment for landlords or massive corporations. It's for you. And the moment we start to transition that mindset from it being a commodity to a human right, we can start to actually fix the problem. That's why the NDP want to tackle it head on by getting rent control, by getting rid of exclusionary zoning, and really encouraging developers to build walkable communities, not what they're currently doing.
Thanks for the question. I also just want to shout out to this level of political engagement and how incredible this feels to see this right now. And thank you for the housing question as well. When I was growing up, I was a child of 3 girls, of a single mom. My mom was a single mom living in rental housing. And rent increases destabilized our family. And they destabilize families who are on fixed incomes. We do not currently have inflationary increases on our social assistance rates, and that is something that the Ontario Liberals are committing to after increasing by 10% and 20% respectively our Ontario Works and ODSP rates. And so that really is about having increases to old age security, to income security, being in line with the actual increases that we are seeing in other places. But rent control actually also puts a cap on those increases. And that is something that the Ontario Liberals are also moving towards. My friends talked about increasing supply. We will double the pace of building to 1.5 million homes. And if you have an opportunity, I would look into construction foundations if you're looking for an economically prosperous job path.
All right, next question, please.
Hello, I'd like to first start off by saying it's an honor to see this firsthand.
Can you just go a little closer to the mic?
Okay. It's an honor to see this firsthand. This is really cool. So, what would you do to help the students that quote unquote fall through the cracks in the education system?
So did everyone hear the question? Yeah. Okay, we're going to start with the communists at the end and then roll back over, please.
The communists believe in full, free, universal access to services, and education is one of them. I will talk about childcare as part of that as well. And we would like to see full childcare access 24 hours a day, because people don't only work between 9 to 5 or 7 to 5. Also with raised wages for education workers. We need stable, needs-based funding formulas for public schools and lower class sizes. Class sizes are huge, and it's uncontrollable. Sorry, I'm running out of time. We really need to fully support our education from cradle to post-secondary.
So I don't know if I'll have an opportunity to address the education topic again, so I'm going to just say that one of the things we believe in Blue is removing the ideology out of the education system so teachers can focus on teaching. And what's happened is, well, that in combination of what has happened with lockdowns and what all the other parties have supported is putting kids in the virtual school, making it very difficult to learn, actually maybe even shaving years off your lives, as studies would show, for damaged education. So we need to keep people in school, for starters. I'm going to read you an email I got from a teacher here, to speak to something here. As an educator in public education, I'm relieved to see that your party is bringing up the infiltration of woke indoctrination in the school system. The focus is so ridiculous that students are not getting a proper education. Many teachers are terrified, and special education students are not getting the support they need to succeed. stop there because I'm out of time. But you get the gist.
I could have easily been a student who fell through the cracks. I have an IEP, I have ADHD and dyslexia. It took a teacher seeing what I had for my potential and pulling me aside and really setting me on the right course. Teachers in lower class sizes is the way to make sure kids don't fall through the cracks and to make sure that people can sit where I am even though they have learning disabilities. So we want to hire more teachers, lower class sizes, and make sure that we're putting the services we need in school through mental health care, counseling, and making sure that kids can get their IEP and can get the proper services that they need. I know if I had to go through the virtual learning that you guys all had to, I would have struggled and probably failed out. I don't know how you guys did it, so kudos, because I took virtual courses at university and I didn't pass them, so good job.
One of the things that the Ontario Liberal platform expressly names is the reimagining of a fully funded grade 13 year. I actually went to high school with your phys ed teacher, Ms. Adams, and we went to OAC together in Walkerton. And we know how important it can be to actually have the time and the space to be able to fully focus on your schooling, especially after a 2-year pandemic that has had many of us struggling to connect online and to make up the difference in the time that we've lost, both socially and academically. So a grade 13 year, as well as this notion of falling through the cracks. There have been many students who have just simply given up during this time and who were giving up before this time. And so making sure that we have access to right needs, right place services, including mental health professionals, as well as attendance supports, and I will give a shout out to peer-based solutions, which include youth who have fallen through the cracks, recovered, and guiding those who are at risk of the same.
I believe students of all abilities, regardless of your race, your gender identity, your ethnicity, your religious background, deserve a safe school with a curriculum that reflects the diversity of our communities. You deserve a government that invests in public education to lower class sizes and to ensure that we do not have mandatory online learning or hybrid learning. You deserve a government that's not going to cut public education by $1.3 billion during a pandemic like the current government has. You deserve a government that's going to invest in addressing the repair backlog in our schools. And finally, I want to talk about post-secondary education for a second. The biggest cuts brought in by the current government was to post-secondary education, especially the OSAP program. Ontario Greens are committed to reversing those cuts and ensuring that what is currently loans become grants, so you can afford to access college or university when you graduate from high school.
Go ahead. Oh, wait, no, that was it. Yeah, we're ready for the next question.
This question comes from our healthcare class here at College Heights. The pandemic exposed some major flaws with our healthcare system, such as nursing shortages and the need for more ICU beds. What is your party's plan to ensure that these issues don't push our healthcare system to its breaking point in the event of another major health issue?
We're going to start down with the Communist Party, I believe, this time. Oh, no, here. Sorry. Thank you.
She wants more time. I understand. Thanks for the question. So there's a number of factors that impact the amount of people that need to go to a hospital, of course. So one of the things that we believe in is early treatment. The things you do before you have to go to the emergency room. That didn't exist during the pandemic. If you want to talk about need for ICU beds, how about making sure people don't get to the point they need to go to the hospital? So let's expand early treatment. I also think we should be hiring back the nurses that are all qualified healthcare professionals that have been terminated or removed from their positions, often with cause, so without benefits or severance or anything like that. because they didn't vaccinate and they didn't believe in it. So those are two ways you can start to address that issue. Of course, I think it's reasonable to say we can look at our healthcare as a holistic issue, and we have some people who are relatively experts in these terms, and I'd be happy to talk to them about it and see how we can find solutions together.
Healthcare is very important to me. I've been and my family have gone to Guelph General way too many times, and we've always got great service, even though the nurses were always overworked. But that shouldn't be the case. So what we want to do is invest and not cut. We want to hire 10,000 more PSW workers so we can have in care and long-term care where it needs to be. We want to hire 30,000 new nurses. We want dental care, pharmacare, and mental health care rolled up into OHIP. So you're not going to emerge with a toothache, or you're not going to get cancer diagnosis and then you can't afford the drugs. We want it all covered. We also want to make sure that when people need help, especially for mental health, that it's adequately and timely covered, because when people can rise above it, get the help that they need, is when they can truly thrive. So we want to make sure that we reintroduce funding that was previously cut, and we want to make sure that everyone gets the well-being they deserve.
Thanks for the question. So for those of you who don't know, I am the CEO at the Guelph Community Health Center, and I share affection for what Will mentioned around upstream early intervention, so that the acute health issues don't come to fruition in the first place. And what we mean by upstream around the social determinants of health is base investments in the things that we've talked about today: housing, food security, poverty elimination, as well as early childhood trauma. Your city of Guelph actually is one of the leading innovators on the notion of how to wrap care around families and children in neighborhoods to prevent early childhood trauma, which can go on to implicate major health issues, including mental health and addictions. And so I'm really proud to be with a party who recognizes we need to right-size hospitals, invest in healthcare, repeal Bill 124, but also invest in comprehensive primary healthcare in the communities, including 15 new community health centers in the province.
The pandemic has really revealed the cracks in our systems of care. And one of the most important ways of fixing the foundation is to invest in the people who deliver that care. Actually, right before I came here today, I did an event with SEIU Healthcare, who endorsed me. They represent PSWs, nurses, and other frontline healthcare workers because of my strong advocacy to remove the wage restraint legislation that is essentially leading to a pay cut for frontline healthcare workers. The Ontario Greens believe in investing in the people who deliver the care for our loved ones. We also know how vitally important it is to invest in expanding primary health care through nurse practitioner-led clinics, family health teams, and other community-based health care. And we also know why it's so important in preventing illness in the first place. And that's why we've made such a strong commitment to addressing the housing affordability crisis and ending legislative poverty in this province.
I'll mention two of our healthcare specific policies. Expanding, of course, vision care, pharmacare, mental health care, and long-term care. Increasing health and hospital funding to above the national average. Also for long-term care, we want to make sure funding is adequate and there is sufficient PPE for everyone to do their job properly. But many of our employment strategy points get around that as well. So 32 hours of work a week at no loss in pay means people have the time and space to regain their equilibrium when they're feeling burnt out. We're also looking at least 2 full weeks of paid sick days paid by the employer. Because if people keep people healthy. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
I was wondering how the parties here today are going to address inflation in this country or in Ontario.
Okay, we'll start with NDP. Thanks for the question.
Right now, inflation's out of control through rising gas prices, rising food costs, rising housing costs, and it is a very complicated question to bring it down. There's different mechanisms to rising inflation rates, but what we can do is we can make life more affordable for you during these high times. That's why we want the $20 minimum wage, because as inflation has increased, everything that you need to buy has also gone up. We want to increase ODSP by 20% and double it within a year, because there's currently people who are deciding what meds they should buy, whether they should eat, or whether they can pay rent, because what we're currently giving them is currently low. We want to help regulate the gas prices to make sure that we can take more profit out of it, to make sure that you're not being gouged at the pumps. Overall, this is going to be a rocky road as we get forward, so we have to make sure that the government is behind you to make sure the average citizen, not wealthy corporations, can make it through this high inflation time.
Yeah, it's a great question and one that's on everyone's mind. And we also know it's a really complicated question, meaning that there's so many, as James said, variables that influence the rate of inflation and also influence our impacts on a community level. And so the first thing that the Ontario Liberal Party has committed to via our leader, Stephen Del Duca, is to bring complex issues such as this to a table with our municipal and federal partners to begin to consider solutions together. And that's called, you may know, cross-level government participation or collaboration, where you're working across party lines often, but also across levels of government to address wicked issues that each of you have control over. And so we will be working with our federal and municipal partners to look at critical issues such as supply chain barriers, as well as ensuring that we have invested in small and medium businesses to increase our domestic production of the many things we rely on for daily life.
Yeah, I would say so many people are concerned about inflation, especially when it comes to food, fuel, and housing. So I've already talked about our masterclass plan to address the housing affordability crisis. So let's talk about food and fuel a bit. One of the things we have to do with food is to crack down on the collusion and price gouging that's happening in concentrated retail markets. One of the reasons we've brought forward, based on looking at best practices around the world, the Grocery Code of Conduct to protect and support local farmers and consumers. On the fuel side of things, we've seen this playbook over and over again when we see spikes in global fuel prices. The best way to solve that today, tomorrow, and forever is to get big oil out of our lives. You can save $2,000 a year driving an electric vehicle. The Ontario Greens are going to make electric vehicles affordable for the average person so we can save money at the pumps. We're going to make transit affordable and reliable so you have options so you don't have to drive. There are solutions to this crisis, and those solutions are connected to addressing the climate crisis as well.
Yeah, it is a huge issue, and I don't have specific policies to address inflation. But a lot of the whole living standards that we're trying to deal with now, we need to get public infrastructure and public ownership of key resources and industries. We need to redirect our priorities. So if we can focus on the things we need and not the things that corporations and big business need. Sorry, I had a thought and it went out. I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know. Part of the program is it's so intertwined that everything works together and it's hard to get in when needed.
So one of the things that people point to for the rising inflation is government spending and putting more money in the economy. That's one of the factors of it. We can accept that it is more complicated than just that one factor, but it is one. What I've heard from the other parties here today is that they want to spend more money and subsidize more things to solve a problem that is partially caused by spending more money. So our alternative would be to cut taxes and put more to reduce those overall burdens. Now we can talk about carbon tax too, because you can talk about making things more affordable, but if you're going to jack the prices up of people's natural gas to heat their houses and the fuel they have to put in their car today, not in the electric car that doesn't even exist, we have to solve this with more meaningful ways than promising to help buy you an electric car in the future when we don't have the infrastructure to support that technology at the moment. Now I'm open to working towards these kind of solutions down the road, but we have to be realistic about our practical barriers to some of the policies that are being advocated here.
Okay, so you get to do that, and you have another minute now, Michelle. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I just wanted to address your comment about investing in infrastructure that we don't even have yet. And when we talk about electric vehicles, or we talk about the Ontario Liberal plan for $1 transit rides anywhere in the province of Ontario, we're actually talking about policies that drive the behaviors that we want to accomplish and need to if we're going to protect our Earth. And so when we actually make electric vehicles more affordable and accessible, or when we make transit a natural choice, we actually do encourage behaviors that get the desired outcomes, which improve affordability and save our planet. And in respect to transit, get us home in time for dinner with our families.
Okay, next question, please.
This is on behalf of one of our students here, Ziomara. What is your party's position on the province's healthcare system paying for gender or sex realignment surgery for trans Ontarians and trans youth?
Yeah, you're up again.
Great. So the Ontario Liberal government is 100% committing to investments to decrease wait times for gender-affirming surgeries, as well as culturally competent and gender-affirming mental health, and long-term care. And when we say that, and you're hearing lots of us say things that are party platform or are pieces that are commitments, I want to tell you about my personal commitment on this issue. I believe that primary healthcare and healthcare includes trans care. Trans care is not a special service that happens over here in a special clinic. It happens and ought to happen within regular primary care practices, and I've led work on that very key issue. How we get to that space is by building inclusive systems that actually include trans voices around the table so that we can actually design services that best meet their needs. And I want to give a shout out to my sister and friend Claire Stiles, who's here. Claire is a fierce trans woman who helps me every day to be able to build inclusive spaces in this journey as a politician as well.
Trans healthcare is healthcare. And having access to gender-affirming procedures is absolutely vital and critical, full stop. Everyone in this province deserves access to high-quality healthcare, regardless of your identity. Pure and simple, full stop. We need to ensure that we have a government that's going to invest in you having and everyone having access to the healthcare services they need. That's why we need to invest in the people who deliver that care, because we know the quality of care that's delivered to everyone in this province is determined by how well we care for the people who deliver that care. So we need to make sure they have fair wages, fair benefits, and training to be able to serve everyone in our community.
You stole my line, I was gonna Trans healthcare is healthcare. And there are plenty of services that people can access to fit their gender role as decided by others. But I think people really need to be able to actually get the health care that they know they need themselves. I'm also gonna quickly add that abortion is also health care.
Unfortunately, I don't actually have a party position on the matter, and so I'd have to just say that it's my firm belief that every life is valuable, and we should continue to get every individual. I can't speak to specific identity politics kind of framing of issues, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
My other candidates on the stage have frankly hit the nail on the head. It's absolutely amazing to see that all major political parties have taken the unified stance that trans healthcare is healthcare. It's no longer up for debate. If people want to do whatever they want with their own bodies, it's their choice. And expressing their gender identity in any way you want is that. So the NDP is committed to gender-affirming drugs and therapy and surgery all rolled up into OHIP, and we want to make it accessible because it should be easy to do within your own community. So we need a government that fights for you. And it's so welcoming to see that we have such a great parties up here all echoing the exact same thing, and it's not up for debate. Trans healthcare is healthcare, full stop.
Okay, we're gonna do one more question before the closing statement, so go ahead, Jesse.
You guys were talking about how there's going to be a green economy, and our younger people going to be able to work in that green economy.
Go ahead, Mr. Schreier.
In the next decade, there will be 65 million new climate economy jobs created around the world. And so the question is Ontario going to lead that or not? Currently, we have a government that's actively discouraging investment in climate economy jobs. The Ontario Greens are about, let's put the policy framework in place to ensure that Guelph and this province leads in the emerging markets of the new climate economy. We would offer free college tuition to 60,000 young people to be trained, particularly in the trades, because we know there's a labor shortage in Ontario delivering on the benefits of the new climate economy. And we would also ensure that we support businesses that are scaling and commercializing new technologies and innovations for Ontario to be a leader in low carbon goods and services. And Guelph is one of the leading communities in this province, in this country, and I believe we need more Guelph in the rest of Ontario to deliver the economic prosperity we need in the new climate economy.
So absolutely. Oh,
Okay, there are a number of policies in our program, such as developing publicly owned green energy industry and rejecting fossil fuel-based pipeline projects, ban fracking, and guaranteeing jobs for displaced carbon industry workers in the renewable sector and other sectors at comparable wages in the same community. I also will throw in that education as a universal, free, and full service means all kinds of education, and the more knowledge we have, the more we can do to come up with better solutions.
You're all going to need jobs. So whatever industry we can get going in Ontario, whether it be green or existing or other new ventures that we are not aware of yet, we need to make sure that we can keep businesses here and that we can provide opportunities for you. And that if you want to be a business owner yourself, that you don't have all all these hurdles and roadblocks to get over to be one of those. And guess what? Business owners employ people. So if you can be a business owner, you can help employ some of your colleagues now and some of the people in the future. So we believe in opening up the economy, growing it strongly, unlike it hasn't really been for a while now in Ontario. We get a little feedback, sorry. And doing that by reducing the regulatory burden and cutting electricity rates so that businesses and industries can compete in the global economy.
Through the NUP's Green New Democratic deal, we have a plan to help grow our economy and transition it towards a more sustainable green future. And one of the biggest hurdles for that is the current labor shortage when it comes to trades jobs. I know plenty of engineers and they can't swing a hammer for their life. We need people to get stuff done. We need people, we need carpenters, we need millwrights, we need solar panel installers. We need people with the skills and expertise to actually get us and build the economy we need. That's why the NEP wants to turn OSAP loans into grants to make sure when the economy grows, we have a ready and skilled labor force for it. Because we will need trained individuals to make sure we get the infrastructure we need to continue to have Ontario to continue to grow. Thank you.
The Ontario Liberal platform piece on this is to grow our carbon pricing system or expand the carbon pricing system such that the biggest polluters are actually directly funding our investment in the creation of 25,000 new green jobs. And we know whether it's across green energy production or whether it's doing home retrofits or industrial retrofits, or whether it's the actual work in some of the innovation and some of the think tanks that we're going to need to be able to, as Will said, create the industries that we don't even know about yet. And so my challenge to you, since you've given us lots of questions, is to think about where you are most lit up when you are working or doing something, and picture your future career, whether it's influencing, innovating, doing, creating, or leading, and start to take steps towards making that happen, because there is a future prosperity in green jobs.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we're going to do the closing statement. So we'll start down at the far end and we'll work our way back, 1 minute each.
Thank you all for your time and attention. Capitalism does not work for workers, and voting communist sends the clearest message in favor of a people's alternative for Ontario, which contains policies that are desperately needed. These policies on their own won't solve the fundamental problem of capitalism. It is clear that the capitalist system and the genocidal legacy of colonialism offer no solution. Socialism can build a society where the needs of people and the environment are in harmony and where working people are in the driver's seat. Socialism is the aim of the Communist Party. Your support helps build a stronger movement for socialism. Thanks again.
It's just been an honor to spend some time with all of you this morning. And the questions confirmed for me why the Ontario Greens support lowering the voting age to 16. Each and every one of you with the questions you asked today and the level of political engagement just validates why we need young voters to become lifelong voters. The reason I got into politics was I felt that the traditional parties weren't addressing some of the major challenges of our time. The climate crisis, rising levels of income inequality, and the need to improve our democracy. And all of you today show what democracy in action looks like. And I would encourage each and every one of you to use the last week of the election as an opportunity to volunteer for one of these political parties on their campaigns. You'll get volunteer hours, you'll learn what politics is like in action, and you'll have an opportunity to connect with people in your neighborhood through the democratic process. Thank you for inviting me to be here today.
When I decided I wanted to run for politics, I was actually on a run in Royal City Park beside the Speed River. And I was thinking about some of the incredible innovation and leadership in Guelph that Queen's Park and the province of Ontario currently miss out on. And so when I decided to run for government, I did that because I want to, A, change government. 4 more years of the current government is not going to be good for Ontario. And also because I wanted the opportunity to bring my mental health, addictions, and healthcare expertise to the table to solve what is one of the greatest healthcare crises in modern memory. And so representation matters, and so I'm running to bring that knowledge and wealth to the table, and I hope that you'll help me do just that. Thank you.
I want to start off thanking you for your questions. I've been to several debates and I've never seen a lineup that went as far as it did with as many questions as you guys had. As a candidate, my top priority will be making life better. I chose to run because I couldn't afford a house, because I got anxiety and depression I needed to pay for out of pocket. I don't think anyone else should. And I wanted to fight for a better climate for us. Frankly, with the past weather events we've had and the summer we're about to have, climate change is the top priority for me. So when you go to the polls, I want you to pick the party that puts you first, that puts affordability for your future first, that puts the climate first, and that puts your own individual priorities and communities first. I hope I've earned your vote, but regardless if I have, get out and vote, because only through using your democratic process can we make the world better. So please vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I do share the thanks of the interest level that you guys have as students, and it's way more than what I have, I'll tell you that much. That's wonderful. I agree with Mike in terms of I got involved because I see a problem in heading towards our democracy right now. Freedom of speech is being shut down. When you think about the fact that if you have a disagreeing opinion, it's getting pushed to the side. You can't have certain viewpoints anymore in our society. We're already there. It's getting worse, so I'm involved because I want to make sure that we can hold on to our freedoms and not turn them over to the government anymore. Now, I will just say that what I hear at the door is not actually about climate change. It's not about affordable housing. What I hear the most when I'm out on doorsteps is that people are unsatisfied with the existing options. The existing options that have been running our country and been a choice on the ballot for years. New Blue is presenting ourselves as an alternative to that. So I'd love for anyone to consider looking at our platform and as this as an option now or into the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much in particular to the candidates for taking time out of their very busy schedules to be here. Thank you to students.